Hello again, and welcome to the second episode of Remember Me, the stories of our babies. And for today's episode, I wanted to talk about Maila. Remember Maila. I think it's only fair to give her the space that she deserves as well. And so before I get into it, I also just wanted to reflect a little bit on the previous episode and talk about a few things that I mentioned. I gave the story about when I had a medium reading, and I just want to say that obviously that's not for everyone. And I also want to say that there's people out there who are absolutely gifted and can, from my belief, absolutely reach your relatives. And it's okay to want to have a message from your relatives. It's not anything crazy or anything to run away from. It's just like, we write letters to people. We write, not letters anymore, but emails, phone calls, all this stuff. It's okay to want to have that sort of connection. And especially when you didn't get to live with your baby outside of the womb or live with your baby long enough before they died. And so that's okay. But at the same time, it's very important to remember that we are in a vulnerable state. We are so vulnerable. And there's so many people out there who would leech off of that, who would take the opportunity to, see someone who is suffering. And we have to be very careful with these things. So I just wanted to put that out there. Yeah. And I guess I wanted to start this episode by looking at the moments that I spent with Maila and the moments after as well. So I became pregnant with Maila shortly after getting married. So I got married in November of 2021 and I became pregnant with Maila in April of 2022. And I do believe she was conceived on my birthday. Okay, I really do believe that. And it's so funny because I have pictures of the day that I believe that she was, not the day that she was made, but like days after. I remember, so it would have been April time, and we were having like a barbecue. I don't know why, but around that spring, my dad was just so obsessed with having loads of barbecues in this house. And we were having this barbecue, but it wasn't cold in any way whatsoever. It was actually really warm. But me, I was freezing cold. And I just remember like sitting indoors wearing this massive like woolly coat and just feeling cold. And I think that's one of the early symptoms that I have from my pregnancy with Mila. But at that particular time, I didn't think anything of it. It wasn't actually until we had another barbecue and an uncle was looking at me. And what time was it? It was probably like 1 p.m. or something. And, I was so unnecessarily tired. I was so sleepy. And the thing is, I had slept a good sleep that day, so it didn't make sense for me to be so exhausted. And I always say this to people, like for like the early symptoms of pregnancy, if you get the tiredness is worse than like your worst hangover, or if you went hiking or anything like mountain climbing, it is absolutely crazier than that. So I was just so tired. And he pointed at me and he said, "You're pregnant." And I was like, why are you singling me out right now? Like, it was just really embarrassing. And I was like, "No, I'm not." And then off I went right off to sleep. And when I woke up from that sleep, I was still feeling incredibly tired and I couldn't explain why. And so, time went by, and I guess after a missed period, I was like, I wasn't even worried. I didn't think that I was pregnant at the time, but I was like, let me, I don't know, like, I just thought, okay, my period hasn't arrived, so I guess let me just try and do a pregnancy test. So I remember this day so specifically. I remember going to ASDA, and I went to ASDA specifically just to get the pregnancy test because I actually had a birthday party to go to. And I remember the date, it was the 12th of May because I had that birthday party. And I got the pregnancy test and I went to pee. And I just remember waiting there thinking, I'm probably not pregnant. And then those two lines came and I was just so excited. I was so elated, like, oh my God, wow. The dreams of like things that I hadn't even thought that I wanted, just everything just started flashing before my eyes, is how it felt like. And I remember the first people that I actually messaged were my friends in the group chat, Anna and Regia. I just sent them a picture of my pregnancy test and I said, I'm pregnant. They were so excited. My husband was in the car waiting for me. So I obviously told him, but for some reason, I can't remember how we were in that moment. I can't remember that. I don't know why. But yeah, I just remember those moments. And I remembered also when I told my parents, like, I was living with my parents at the time and I was 28 already. I had already done the university. I had already been married and all the goody two shoe things, right? Obviously, you don't have to do any of those things to get pregnant and be pregnant. Like, it's fine if you have children outside of that. Like, there's no norm. But for me, like, my dad has always had like a high standard, but he was never strict. He just had things that he had ambitions for me. And I took that so seriously down to a T. And when I became pregnant, even after I had done all the things by the book, I still felt like I was a teenager and I'm going to tell my dad I'm pregnant. And I was just so embarrassed. I was scared to tell them. And I remember my dad was laying in bed and I went upstairs, laid in bed next to him. And I was like, Dad, I'm pregnant. And then I started crying, crying as if I was going to get told off or something like that. And then he just goes to me, well, it's about time. And I was like, really? Really? So yeah, it wasn't that deep. So on the 12th of May, when I found out as well, remember I was going to Sev's birthday party and we were all outside. It was a beautiful spring day, lots of sun, lots of people around us. And I just felt like I was glowing. There was just this aura of glow around me. And I didn't tell anyone there, but I was looking at everyone so differently. I was like, oh my God, I'm carrying life inside me. Like, how crazy. And everyone was playing rounders and being like all aggressive with rounders. And I was just being very delicate, like a gazelle, because like I'm carrying life. And yeah, that was just, and I, when I think of that, I think of all the memories of things where it was just so surreal. Like, I remember when I was at work and I was showing, and there was this girl who works in a different company but in the same space, and she came up to me and she's like, isn't it just so incredible that women, you know, can carry a human being inside of them? Like, and I was like, yeah, like, it's so crazy. I can't explain it. It's just crazy, crazy. So yeah, I remember those beautiful moments. I remember the first scan we saw of her, and it was just so like, wow, there's a child in there and she's moving. And she was sucking her thumb, and it was just so beautiful to see her. Like, I couldn't even believe that they did these things. I thought they just, you know, breathed in there. I don't know. But she was sucking her thumb, and I thought, wow, that's such a, she's already got a little personality. And she's actually named after my cousin. And my cousin's name is Angela Bruna. And Maila is Maila Angela. My cousin, ever since she was a little kid, she would always suck her thumb, and she sucked her thumb until like she was well into her teens. I wouldn't be surprised if she still does it today. Sorry to say that, Ange, if you're listening. But yeah, it was things like that. Like, she was already showing her personality, and I remember we wanted to record it, but then the doctor was like, "Oh, you can't do it." And now that I really think about it, there was a moment with the doctor where my husband asked him, "So do you have any children?" And then he said, "Oh, my wife is expecting," and after we had a few complications. And those things at the time, it doesn't hit you in any way because you're just like, oh, okay. And you're just so involved in what's happening with you that you don't realize that there could be anything that could potentially go left. And I think that's the sad thing. I think the sad thing is that you don't get educated enough around pregnancy. I wouldn't say that we don't bother enough to educate ourselves, but I think it's because we live in a society that just expects pregnancy to just go so smoothly that this side of the story is never spoken about. And so because it's not spoken about, we don't think it happens. But yet 1 in 4 pregnancies end in loss. That's a lot of people. That's a lot of stories that are not being told. That's a lot of people, hiding in the shadows because they are silenced and suffering in silence. It's just absolutely awful that we have to live like that. So yeah, I also remember like at work, I had just started working here. It was January 2022. I say working here because I'm actually recording this at my workplace. And I became pregnant and I was like, oh no, I shouldn't be pregnant so soon, because what's going to happen when I tell them? Surely they're going to be like, you've just started the job, you're going to lose the job. So I remember being like, I'm not going to tell them for ages. We had a work conference in Paris and it was only 2 days. And I was probably like, when was that? It would have been July. And I remember like it was so much fun. Like everyone was so excited, all these people from around the country, because I work in this company that's part of like bigger organizations. And people were obviously drinking a lot because in the conference is like a celebration of like the achievements that everyone has individually made. And I remember having to literally hide from certain colleagues because I knew they'd be like, drink, drink. And I'd be like, I can't drink. And I just didn't want to be pressured. And so I did a lot of hiding away. I had one colleague who he was a lot younger and he didn't really involve himself in these things. So we were like, oh, let's just go see certain sites in Paris. And I had one friend there who was probably the only person I told at the time. And I was so bloated. I was so bloated. Like anything I ate, I literally looked like I was 5 months pregnant. And so I kept showing her like, oh my God, look at my belly. I need to hide this. So it was just really funny, like playing hide and seek with the belly. So I didn't want to tell them. However, after that scan, I wanted to send a picture to my really close family members. I'm not really big on social media with sharing so much of my life, so I didn't really care about putting my scan on social media, especially because people putting bad vibes onto my baby. So I was like, no, I don't want that, because I don't want anything bad to happen. And so I sent it to like specific family members. And I remember the WhatsApp group from work was there, but I literally said to myself, ha ha ha, imagine if I actually send it there. And I was very careful not to send it. So tell me why I sent it there. And my friend calls me and she's like, did you mean to send that? And I said, send what? Well, did you mean to send your scan to the work group? And oh my gosh, the scream I screamed was insane. I screamed so loud. I was like, no, no. And then I just started laughing hysterically. I go on the WhatsApp group and already naturally, congratulations, congratulations, congratulations. And I was just like, ugh. And I couldn't even lie and say, oh, it's someone else, because my name was literally there. And so I deleted it and I told I told the first few people who commented to delete their comment, but it was too late by that point. Everyone had seen it. And yeah, so they congratulated me and stuff, but I was so embarrassed for such a long time. But yeah, Maila connected me to a lot of people actually. So there's a friend of mine, well, ex-friend. I'm really bad with getting back to people, and that's something that I need to. Every year I say I need to work on this, but I really am bad at communicating because I just get so overwhelmed with messages on WhatsApp. If I see you, I'm always going to be like, it's like we've seen each other yesterday, but obviously not everyone appreciates that, and I completely understand. And I guess with what's happened to me now, I understand the importance of making sure I'm checking up on the people who I love. But I had this friend who I hadn't spoken with for a while because of my bad communication. And she just was like, let me cut ties. And she messaged me. And she messaged me out of the blue just to say, hey, I'm pregnant. And I was like, what? Well, I'm pregnant too. And literally, she told me on the same day that I found out, so the 12th of May. I was like, I'm pregnant too. And then she was like, I'm going to give birth around the 21st of January, 21st of January. And I said, oh my God, that's the same date that I've got. I would have calculated that date from the app that I immediately downloaded. And it was just so surreal for her as well. Her experience to get in there had been very difficult. She's had a lot of issues with fertility, and so I was so happy for her. Like, she absolutely deserved it. I mean, everyone deserves to have a baby, but when you see that journey, you're just like, you're so happy for that person. And I feel like now, having lost my baby and I seeing people struggle with fertility or secondary infertility after loss, like it is a painful journey. I feel like I fully understand now being on this side. And so she taught me so much about pregnancy. She was the first person who was like to me, especially because of her journey to get there. She was like, make sure you get your folic acid, make sure, I didn't even know what that was and why I needed to take that. And if it wasn't for her, I probably wouldn't have taken it until much later, if the doctors even mentioned it. Make sure you take your folic acid, make sure you get onto this app and that app, make sure you get the discounts, make sure you get the freebies. So all the things I absolutely learned from her. And even though our relationship isn't the same anymore, especially because she didn't contact me when my baby died and she knew, but I guess she was pregnant at the time, but then after, she didn't contact me ever since. I was just like, you know what, cutting all ties. And I guess you can say, well, you've been a shit friend for her before. But when someone dies, I feel like that kind of changes things. But maybe not, maybe not. Absolutely. Each to their own. And yeah. So I'm really grateful for what she taught me about pregnancy, because everything I went to learn from then on was through that app. I learned absolutely nothing from doctors. Like, I remember the hospital that I was actually supposed to have Maila in, and I actually changed the hospital because of this. They would tell me things, and when I'm asking questions, they're not really answering, or it felt like I was bothering them. Now that I look back at my pregnancy and what ended up happening to me, there were signs from the beginning. So when I was 10 weeks pregnant, I kept getting protein in my urine. And the first time, I remember just getting a text through my phone, and I was actually at Buckingham Palace on that day, just out with the family. And I just got this text and it said, oh, there's protein in your urine. And I'm thinking, what even is that? So I asked them and they just said, oh, it means it's nothing, just take another test. Got another test, the same thing happened. It happened about 3 times until it didn't happen again. And the thing is, it could have absolutely led to nothing, but it didn't lead to nothing. And they, even if it did lead to nothing, explain to me what it means. I need to understand what is happening to me and to my body. I think it's really important that women and men, all people who are pregnant, know what is happening to their body and really truly understand. I always say this, there are 1,000,001 things that can happen to us when we are pregnant, but there are common things that happen to specific people sometimes, a demographic. We are not taught or aware of these things. And if we were aware, we would be able to nip it in the bud or go get checked out when we need to get checked out and things like that. So I think it's unfair to not give people the information that they need to know. So yeah, I learned everything from an app. And preeclampsia was one of the things that I learned about, but I didn't really delve deep into it because it said something about early in the pregnancy or late in the pregnancy. And I was like, I'm already this far along. Surely nothing will happen, and I just didn't want to read any more about it because I was like, if I don't know, then it won't happen to me. And ignorance is not bliss. It really isn't. If there's one thing in life that you need to know about, is when you're having the biggest changes of your life, you do need to do your research, because they're not going to give you that. They are too tired, too understaffed, this is just a job. And, the worst does unfortunately happen. So yeah, I want to go into some of the questions that I was asking the parents on the lives that I have been doing. And yeah, I'll get into it now. So Maila is named Maila Angela Viana Moraes. She is named Maila because way before I even dreamt about having children, my husband said to me, if I ever have a child, a daughter, I would like to name her Maila. And as soon as he said that, I was like, yes, that's such a beautiful name. I've never heard this name before. And I like quite different names. And I was like, yeah, this is beautiful. And he's like, yeah, because it reminds me of Bob Marley. And I was like, yeah, absolutely, sure. That will be the name of our baby. And I then decided that it would be Angela, because in the Portuguese community, we tend to have 2 names. Like mine is Helena Natasha. And, I wanted to name her Angela because it's also my cousin who I absolutely love so much. And it just seemed fitting. And it also reminded me of one of my favorite writers, Maya Angelou. So it made absolute sense. She was born on the 29th of December 2022 at 3:34, and she was due actually on the 20th of January 2023. Her star sign would have been a Capricorn. I'm a Taurus, and Capricorns and Tauruses get on exceedingly well. So we would have been great friends. Her dad is a Capricorn and he was born on the 4th of January. So just a couple of days after Maila died, which was a really hard day for him, obviously. And when we had Maila, we didn't hold her, like I said in the previous podcast, because, you just have these preconceptions of a dead baby. And I was just so afraid, really and truly. My mum held her and I'm so grateful for her. My cousin, Alicia, she held her or touched her hand. I can't remember, but my cousin was probably 19 at the time, and to see her express such love and empathy, and she took pictures of my daughter well before I even thought about taking pictures. Until this day, she's just so kind and so giving and so warm about my child, and I love her so much for it. I really appreciate that. Me and my husband went back to the hospital after we realized we could on his birthday, and he didn't want to at the time. And I also wasn't going to force that on him because I understand it's hard. But he decided on his own that he wanted to go back and see his daughter. And it was beautiful. We have incredible pictures of that moment. Maila's heritage is Angolan Brazilian, but she would have obviously been born in England. And she would have had Portuguese influence, obviously, because we speak Portuguese. My first symptoms, as I said, was tiredness, and I hated the smell of barbecued beef. And I think it's because my dad was always doing that when I was pregnant. So it was ugh, no, couldn't stand that. But my biggest craving was feta cheese. Oh, I would have feta with everything. I remember at work, one of the things I would always make was a bagel sliced in the middle with butter and Marmite and then feta on top. Oh, it was beautiful. Beautiful. I visited Paris, like I said earlier. I also went and visited my grandparents in Portugal because I don't know, I had been really thinking about my granddad's death for such a long time. And I feel like since Maila died, I hate to say this, but I'm always thinking about it. And so I was like, it's really important. And I want to be so open about just talking about death and saying the word death and not shying away from it, because it's the truth, it's what happened. And if we soften it, especially to listeners who don't know what grief is, it makes them sort of turn away without feeling anything. But dying is just ridiculously shocking for us. And yeah. So anyways, I thought a lot about my granddad and I was like, I want him to see me pregnant, and I wanted my grandparents to see Maila. So I even took a picture of her scan with me and I took her to Portugal and I gave it to my nan. I'd originally put it on her. So they've got a restaurant and I put it in her restaurant, but that felt like, again, the whole thing of people seeing and the bad vibes and stuff. So I was like, no, that's not a good idea. So I decided to just put it in her room where my nan does a lot of prayer, and she's got loads of candles in this specific sanctuary bit, let's say, in her room. And when I recently went back to Portugal this year, my nan had Maila's picture next to the whole family picture in the corridor. And that just made me feel so warm and seen, and she remembers her. And my nan is so unafraid to speak about Maila. She she mentions her in our conversations, more so about what happened than this side of things where I'm talking about the memories I have. But I'm so grateful that she does, because she's the only one in my family in Portugal who has done that. And I'm just so grateful. Music is a big thing. Like I said to you guys, I sang Sing to Me to her. As soon as hours after losing Maila, the only thing that got me together was creating that playlist. And I listened to it every now and then to feel connected to her. And I had a beautiful baby shower too. We played such amazing games. There were so many people there, and it was beautiful to see the people who came to the hospital, for example, to see me or came to my house afterwards. And I really appreciate you guys for it. We played this really cool game where everyone has a baby picture and we put it on the screen. And with this picture, you have to guess who in the room it is. And there were so many of us. It was such a good game. Mila was most active in the morning. She was like an early bird. Um, I would wake up. So I start work at 7:30, and to reach here, I'd need to wake up around like five something or even six. And if ever I slept past my alarm, she would be my alarm. She would wake me up. And we just had such a sick routine. Like I absolutely loved our routine. We had a nickname for Mila, and my husband, when he would speak to her, he would always call her Papi. I'm just having like such flashbacks of those moments with him and her. Like it's so beautiful. I associate seagulls with Mila. I associate sunflowers with Mila. The sunflowers is actually because when I had my reading with the medium, he said to me that I had yellow flowers, but I didn't. I'm not a flower person. There was nowhere around me where there was yellow flowers. However, he was like adamant that I had yellow flowers. And I just remember after I had that reading with him, the following day I went to a Spiritist church, which I will speak about this in another podcast. And they gave out everyone yellow roses. Now, you would think that yellow roses were my flower for Mila, but he specifically said sunflowers. You have yellow flowers, sunflowers. And I thought, okay, yeah, that's going to be the flower because that happened very significantly. And I went to that church after, and that never happened again. They never showed, they never gave out yellow flowers. And I just thought that was a nod to what he said. I also have seagulls as her thing because on her, and I can't remember if I already mentioned this story, but on the day of her funeral, I had set the alarm for like 7 in the morning. I just couldn't get out of bed. And I remember just hearing the screeching sounds of like up to, like, I didn't know what it was. I heard screeching sounds at the window. And then when I look outside, I see about 20 seagulls. And, white birds are often associated with like, I don't know, spirit, like doves and peace. And I just took that immediately as, yes, that is a message from my daughter, giving me the strength that I needed. I live in London, and yes, nowadays there are quite a few seagulls, but it just felt very significant to see so many of them in one specific place outside my window. And I have a beautiful video of this. And Mila's name, I found out only this year, means beautiful sea. And it just felt very significant that she sent creatures of the sea, seagulls, to give her mummy and her daddy the strength to do her funeral. And I do have a tattoo of Mila. It's her handprint. And I got it literally like, I think on the 8th of January. So fresh out of the hospital. I was still dozed up in drugs. And I was just like, just do it. And the pain was like, I kept being like, well, it's not as painful as her dying. So just pierce me harder. And I remember crying so much. I cried the whole way through, and the guy probably thought I was crying because of the pain, and then he probably realized because underneath her handprint it says, "I entrust her spirit in your hands," and I don't know why I even said that. I feel like I was still in the early days of like, yeah, just accept, like I was being forced to just accept it. And when I wasn't even there, and even till this day, I don't just accept it. Inside her hand is Simba. I've always wanted this tattoo of Simba where Rafiki draws him on a tree. And it just felt so specifically meaningful that I was able to use that inside her hand. And it just connected me to my biggest love since I was a young kid. So much so that on the day that I came back from the hospital, I stayed there for 5 days. I sat down, my mum's living room, and I just watched Lion King 1, Lion King 2 on repeat. I felt like I just regressed to being a child myself, like I just needed to be held in that moment, just watching the thing that gave me comfort, and it was always the Lion King. I feel like Mila has taught me many things, not that I want to be taught anything by her, I just wish she was here. But she taught me to just be outspoken, just say how I feel. I still feel like I'm still learning how to do that, but just say what I feel and do what I want to do because life is incredibly short. So I'm just going to quickly go on to our story. So, like, I had I hate saying a healthy pregnancy, but really and truly, it was a pregnancy that had no complications. It came as a complete shock when at 36 weeks and 5 days, I remember like a couple of days before I had just looked at the app and looked at how she would have looked in that moment. She looked so, she was ready to come, right? And I remember being told that babies can come like 15 days before their due date or 15 days after. And that's what I was looking out for. And I didn't even notice that 36 weeks and 5 days is considered premature. So when I went into labor in that moment, I was just thinking, oh my gosh, I'm ready to give birth. I had prepared so much for this. I knew that I wanted a vaginal birth. I had suffered with vaginismus for a very long time, and maybe I'll do an episode about that if anyone is ever interested, about what that means and having a baby and baby loss, maybe, I don't know. And I wanted to really overcome this idea of being afraid of anything coming inside or coming outside of my vagina, basically. And I did a course from the Positive Birth Company, and it was an incredible course. The only thing I wish that it spoke about is about also the things to look out for, the risks. Maybe it did and I didn't notice, but I wish those things were also spoken about. But I learnt about the in breath and the out breath, and how to breathe when you go into labor, and the yoga and the music and all of these things. Like I had the app where she tells you when to breathe when you're in labor. I was bouncing on my yoga ball. I was doing all the correct things, preparing for my baby to give birth. And I was so prepared. Like I'd exercised I forgot the name now, but you know, the area between your anus and your vagina where I don't know why I laughed. I'm so immature. Where you have to massage it so that you're ready to, like, when you give birth, it's more elasticated or whatever. I was so prepared. And so when I went into labor, I didn't think anything of it. And I did start vomiting a lot, and I'd never vomited throughout the whole pregnancy. I didn't have any nausea. And I Googled, is it bad to vomit? And it's just like, oh, it's normal. This is what happens when you're in labor. So, okay. So I went into labor. It was like on the 28th of December at around, I'm going to say 11 p.m., probably midnight of the 29th. The night before, actually, Maila was moving erratically on the 28th. And I remember telling my husband, I was like, oh my God, she's excited about something. But I didn't notice that these things are things that you're supposed to notice, right? And he touched my tummy and I said, oh, it feels a bit sore, don't touch me. Didn't think anything of it. Went into labor. I didn't realize that I was supposed to be focusing on whether she's moving or not, because all up until then, I had just been told when you go into labor, your belly goes really hard. And that's all I was noticing. My belly was hard. Uneventful, really. I was just stretching a lot and stuff. And then I remember around 11, my waters break. And I actually wanted to have a water birth. And when that happened, I was like, oh, shoot. Out goes the water birth out of the window, because I could get an infection. So in that moment, I had already started messaging people. I messaged my colleague. I messaged my cousin. One of my cousins actually said, oh, Mila's going to be born on my birthday. And I said, no, that would be too early. And that was her birthday. So I said, look, your wish is coming true. And I told my mom and stuff, and they're like, oh, get an ambulance. And I was like, oh, we don't need an ambulance. Let me just get an Uber. Even my husband, he wanted to go to the hospital a bit earlier. And I was like, no, they tell you to stay at home when you go into labor until the contractions are closer. So I'm not going to go. They're just going to send me back. So we get on the Uber, and the guy is looking at me like, what the hell is this woman? I was wearing this massive Dumbo jumper that they had at the time in Primark. And so he couldn't see that I had a belly, I guess. And I was just waddling. And then I told him I'm having a baby. And then he took us to the hospital, and every bump on the road was so sore. The soreness I felt when Maila was moving a lot was what I was feeling in that moment. And my husband was on the phone to my cousin, just being like, oh, what should be her name? Should it be Maila? Should it be Raina? Should it be Rain? All these things. We get in, and I remember the midwife who opened the door, she just had really beautiful blue eyes. Little did I know that this would be the midwife who would help me give birth. We were taken inside, and they were like, oh, wait there. So we waited like 20 minutes, and my husband was feeling he was very anxious. And I was like, oh, men. And I had my TENS machine because my back was feeling weird, like painful. And then we go inside. And then the woman gets out the thing to like measure the heartbeat, and she's just there for a while. And I'm not really thinking anything of it because I'm obviously in pain, right? And the contractions are getting tough, and She goes to me, "Oh, I only seem to be getting your heartbeat. Let me just call some doctors." So she hits whatever she hits a button. About it looked like 10 doctors, but I don't think it was actually that much. Probably three came in, and they swooped us to labor ward. They get out the ultrasound, and they're just quiet for so long. Like after they've put it on my belly, they're so quiet. And after what felt like 10 minutes, I said, "Where's my baby?" Or they say, "I'm sorry, but your baby didn't make it." I remember I just felt so numb. Like there was literally no emotion. I was numb. The floor had been ripped out from me. I said to them, "Are you sure? Can you not do CPR? What do you mean?" It didn't make any sense to me at all. And my husband is on the phone to my cousin still, or whoever, and he doesn't get it because he doesn't speak English too well at the time. And I have to just break it to him. I said, "O bebê morreu," like that. The baby's dead. Very cold. I just had nothing. And he just breaks down on the floor. He just breaks down. Just seeing my husband completely collapsing, I just couldn't believe that that was happening. A lot of people don't realize, but when you give, when you're about to give birth, you give birth the same way. Some people have C-sections and other people have vaginal births, and that's what I wanted to do anyway. They had told me you're already 10 centimeters dilated. It's like when you're going to poo, you don't need to push. There's no such thing as pushing. There's no force that you need to go into. So I just went into that mind state. My dad was in the room, actually. My cousin was in my room. My auntie was in the room, and my husband and my mum whilst I was about to give birth. And I kind of liked that. I don't know. There was something about having family present that made it feel good. I don't know if I'm muddling things up if they weren't in the room and they came after, but it felt like they were in the room. And my dad was like, the language had already changed around Maila, and he was very much take it out of her, take it out of her. And I don't fault him for this language, because I understand, the sense of like wanting to protect your child who you think might possibly also die. And so you just want to protect your child. But it was difficult to deal with that because that's your grandchild. And for me, I think that's also what muddled my relationship with wanting to see Maila, because immediately now it's become an inanimate, unreal thing, even though she was very much real and I very much gave birth to her. And he was just saying, "Oh no, give her a C-section, give her a C-section." And I didn't want a C-section. I had prepared to have a vaginal birth, and that's what I was there to do. There was no way that I was going to go around having a C-section. Like, if there's anything that I can control in this uncontrollable, most devastating situation, that is continuing with my birth plan. And my birth plan was to give birth vaginally. And there was no way that I was not going to do that. I was so prepared. And this is another thing that just bugs me so much, is how ready I was. And I guess everyone is ready. And even if you're not ready, you're preparing yourself to be ready to give life and have this whole future ahead of you. So the doctor said, "No, it's too late now. She's already 10 centimeters and we can't give her anything." The doctor is actually a midwife called Claire. And they asked me if I wanted to take any medication, and I said absolutely not. How I prepared my birth plan is how I want to go forward. The only thing that I'll be happy to take is gas and air, which I did take the gas and air, and it made me very high. But I remember the moment where I felt the baby's coming. And, you're told from movies, you see that women are always laying down on their back. And this is obviously the worst position to put someone to give birth, because the gravitational pull is if you're upright, in some sort of upright position. And I'd practiced all the upright positions, and the one that felt right for me was to be on all fours. It just naturally, even though I thought I would want to be sitting down, like there was things that I thought I'd pre-planned, and in that moment your body just feels a type of way. You just go into this very instinctual position, and I was on all fours, and I did the breath, the in-breath and the out-breath and whatever, and she was coming out, and I'm like, the baby's coming. It really felt like I was pooing. And I kid you not, that was the most incredible, wonderful feeling in the world. And it's so gutting that I went through all that wonderful feeling, to not have a baby at the end of it, not have a baby to hold. It is unbelievable. unbelievable. It is unbelievable. And I know the way that I'm speaking in these podcasts, maybe I sound upbeat, but I am so brokenhearted, really and truly. And I think I will continue to be brokenhearted. And mending my heart has been from speaking. And I just want to remember what it was like for me in those early days. If I was listening to myself now in those early days, I wouldn't want to hear things like things will get better, it will get easier, all of this. I wouldn't, because I didn't want it to get easier. I don't want it to feel any better, because at the end of the day, the pain is what keeps you closer. And the worst thing that I wanted is it was for time to move forward. I wanted time to move forward fast because I didn't want to be in this position. But at the same time, I didn't want time to move fast because I knew that by time moving forward quicker, that's the further away I am going to be from having my child. And I dread the passing of time. Each year that goes by is however much time that's keeping me away from my baby. Like, I keep thinking about, people who say stories of, oh, my baby would have been 20, would have been 50. And I'm like, oh, 50 years without your child. It is really just, complicated. So my birth was beautiful. I couldn't properly look at her. I couldn't see her like that. I couldn't hold her. I didn't. They asked me if I wanted to. The only thing that I wish would have been different from those moments is someone to, obviously a lot of things happened. I lost a lot of blood and I needed a blood transfusion. Many things happened. And I didn't even want to get a blood transfusion. I didn't want them to remove the blood clots from me. I very much wanted to die, because what's the point of living if my baby isn't here? What's the point? I failed in so many ways. Why do I get the right to continue when she doesn't? And if she can die, so can I. I'm glad to say that I don't have those thoughts so vividly as much as I did. And I hope that this message that I'm speaking on this podcast serves as a hand for someone who is feeling in that position. And if there's one thing that you can take from this, is that the ability to wake up every day is very difficult, but your ability to continue to just get up once a day is the legacy that you are continuing with your child. And you may not believe this. This may be very wishy-washy, very like motivational speech. This is not what I'm trying to do. The basic facts is that the legacy of Maila will not continue if I don't continue to speak of her. She will be completely erased from memory, forgotten. As we all know, living in this situation, no one speaks about our babies unless we have really good friends and family who do that. No one actually does. No one brings them up in conversation except us. So the ability for us to continue is the reminder that they did exist. And even if we don't do big grand gestures in their memory, they still live on through us, right? That great Lion King song, "He lives in you, she lives in me," if there's anything you can hold on to. But I do remember what it was like in those moments, and just hating everything, hating seeing. Honestly, the word hate is very strong, but it's very real, because I've lost my child. My child is dead. Seeing other babies, hearing other babies. I used to have to put headphones, music blasting really loud. Didn't want to leave my house. I wanted to be completely alone. And at the same time, I wanted people to be there. So when people came over, I would hide and pretend that I was sleeping or something. But I was glad they came. I was so glad they came. So yeah, in the hospital bed, my family, so much family came, and I'm so grateful for them. I felt protected. Having my family there and being in the hospital, I stayed in the hospital for a week. I wanted to stay there longer. There was one day where they came up to me and they said, "You could be discharged today. Would you want to?" And I said no, because it was that safety bubble that I was in now. My family became the safety bubble. Like I said, Maila was born on the 29th of December, so it's very close to New Year's. So I had family and friends who came and celebrated New Year's with me. I had my work friend, Shay, who came and sat with me every single day in that hospital bed. She did so much, and I'm so grateful for her. My husband's friends also came, and he doesn't have family here, so it was amazing to have people show up for him in that way. One of his friends gave me his Crocs, just small things like this. And some of these people don't really sit there and think, oh, I'm going to do this and that to be empathetic, to show empathy. They just do it naturally. And I wish everyone just had a natural, instinctual, empathetic bone in them. But yeah, I'm so grateful for those people, and I hated knowing that one day I would have to leave this hospital. And that day obviously came. I went home just stunned. I didn't have a car seat because I hadn't yet opened the car seat. I came back to my mum's house. I can't remember if she put things away. She probably did, because I don't remember seeing any baby things around. Also, the things weren't ready. Like, I know I only had 4 weeks left, but I hadn't yet put everything ready because I was also living in temporary accommodation at the time. So yeah, a lot of things were a bit up in the air. And days went by. I went and got my tattoo, and people started showing up in different ways. My friend Sev, she came and she brought me lentil soup. And thank you so much. And she asked me to see a picture of my baby. Thank you so much, Sev. Like, I don't think some people might understand, but they don't understand the level of the things they do, especially in those early days. That makes a difference. Like, I will never forget those moments. You know, we always get flashbacks. Like, oh, those early days, I was getting nightmares, night sweats, consistent flashbacks. Maila's funeral, I could have invited a lot of the family that was present, but I just couldn't do it. I don't know, something about it, just, I needed to be held by the small circle. So my dad was there, my mum was there, Maila's godmother, my cousin, was there, my brother was there, even though he didn't really want to go, but I really wanted him to be there. And my dad's colleague was there, and my husband's colleague was there. Oh gosh, I wrote something really beautiful for her. This year, on the 9th of February, was the 1 year anniversary of her funeral. And my auntie, who's in her 40s, had her third baby, and it was a girl, and she was born on that day. And honestly, everything went off the roof again for me. I was, come on, you could have picked a better day, but you know, it is what it is. And I mean, it's gutting, but I've unfortunately lost I lost the video that I did with Maila when I managed to go back into the hospital. Then I went to Brazil in April of 2023, so a couple of months after Maila's death. And I stupidly lost my phone. I just misplaced it and I never had it again. And I was so lucky that I put those pictures on the Facebook group, because that was that one place where I could share it openly without embarrassment. That's how I got them back. And I was also lucky to have made a photo album with all the pictures. Not all of them, but some of the pictures. But the video I do not have, and I wish I had it. So it felt like another loss of my baby. But yeah, guys, this is the episode of Remembering Maila. I feel like as we go on with the episodes of this podcast, things might come up that I will remember from Maila, and whilst I'm speaking to other parents about their babies, I might be like, oh, me and Maila did this and that as well, just to keep the conversation going, keep those memories alive, because 9 months, or should I say 8 months, almost 9, is a long time, and there's probably so many things that had happened that I don't remember. And I hope that if you're listening out there and you want to remember your babies too, I hope that what we talk about is also something that sparks memories in you that you forgot as well, because as we do, and especially when, you know, the birth of and the death of our children is so traumatic, that informs everything, and that's all we tend to remember. But I think it's important for us to try to remember. It doesn't necessarily have to be the good days, because I know some people would have had complicated pregnancies that then ended up in death. So it's okay for us to also just remember those less fun, good times, but still use that as moments of bonding and moments of remembering your baby, because that's still part of their journey and that deserves to have a space. And I hope that I'm not coming across as I'm romanticizing, because it is a very complex thing. Our children did die, like that's something I can't forget. But we have so much love for them. We have love for them first and foremost. And we have pain for them. It is difficult. Living without your child dying, is the worst thing that can happen to a person. I like to end the podcast with resources. And as I'm recording this, the one resource that I can think of right now is that it's currently, for me, it's October and it's Black History Month. And I'm currently writing a blog post about the Black resources that there are in the baby loss community. And so there is a new charity that's just started, and it's called Ebony Bond Support, and it's about helping Black families experiencing baby loss and Black parents experiencing baby loss. And I think it's really important because, as I said, I had a lot of people that didn't show up for me. And families sometimes don't know how to talk about it. And especially Black families, it's very taboo. We are getting better, I think, especially with the new generation of men and women out there vouching and advocating and speaking very proudly about their children. I think families are starting to understand and getting the memo. But they do need a lot of help. They need help knowing what to say, how to say it, when to say it, what to do, how to show up. It's actually just common sense. Acts of service, I think, are always a great way to show up for your family in the same way that you would if they had a living child. Bring them food, bring them gifts, things like that. I mean, till this day, I'm still very salty about my auntie who didn't call me. And I was in the hospital bed, sitting there, waiting for 5 days for her to message me. And the news travels fast. Bad news travels fast. So everyone in Brazil knew, everyone in Angola knew, family who I've never met in Angola called me, video called me actually, and cried with me. Family in Portugal messaged and called, but this one auntie in Portugal did absolutely nothing. And I was gutted because we were like sisters. My mum is the one who raised her pretty much, and we grew up in the same household. She was always playing pranks with me. I know as we get older, we do distance ourselves from certain people because life just is lifing. But still, like when something like that happens, you remember that that person was a significant part of your life. And her excuse is always that she's busy and she's hardly got time for family. And she never messaged me, or, well, it's not a message that I was hoping for. It was a phone call. She never phone called me when my baby died, when my baby girl died. And then she ended up messaging my mum on the 2nd of January. And she said she doesn't know what to say. And then she said, time will pass. And no, time does F all. But I was just so like, why is she not contacting me? Like, what is going on? But Ebony Bond Support, I went on a whole tangent, is basically there to support us, families. And there's different things that will inform the way we experience our baby loss. Not to say that the loss of our babies are any different to the loss of anyone losing a baby, but I mean the way that culturally we experience it. And they provide us spaces to talk. They provide us a helpline, which I think is really important. I was using helplines almost every single day. Now, not so much, but helplines was my port of call. I would call there all the time. You can go and meet them for meals. You can go out and see things with them. Today, for example, I'm going to see a play called Ellipsis. But yeah, guys, that was the resource of this week. Thank you ever so much. And I'm sending you an abundance of love and light. I hope you find signs of your children this week, today, every day, every moment, in different ways. And I know a lot of people say that they don't see signs. Well, just allow yourself to be receptive. Maybe you don't think of that thing that happened to be a coincidence. Maybe it is a very deliberate sign from your baby. And may you continue to remember the best moments you spent with them.